Hello, what you're about to see is me, an absolute rank amateur, stripping a BSA Bantam engine. I've done this very many times and I am self-taught, so please forgive me if throughout the video I use the wrong part name or description, but I'm hoping the video is of sufficient use to those people that perhaps haven't had the nerve to try to strip a simple two-stroke engine and basically follow some simple instructions. I will do another video showing how to reassemble the bike's engine. So, part one, I've removed the engine. I've used a supermarket branded degreasant on the engine as best as I can. History is B175 running fine. All of a sudden I couldn't find top gear. I've always used good engine oil and there were no pre-indicators to the root cause of why I couldn't select the gear. This next series of videos will cover off separating the engine, main primary cases and all the associated paraphernalia. Hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so this example of an engine strip is a little bit different. I've got electronic ignition fitted, so there's no cam plate there, it's empty. And you'll see on the left hand side here the tools that I've used to separate the cases. The point I'm trying to make is there's two Phillips type screwdrivers here. I found it's absolutely important that you get the right size screwdriver for the right head of screw. If you don't, you end up with a mullered head, and I think eventually that frustrates a lot of people as these bikes change ownership, and over the years they become difficult to remove and people replace them with the Allen sockets type affair, which I don't actually think look as nice as the original Phillips type crosshead screw. But yeah, so that's all screws removed. I'm about to lift the top off and then we'll take a closer look at the clutch and the primary chain, make an assessment on that. So I wouldn't usually do this, but for the purpose of the video it's a good idea because it's good practice. A bit of old cardboard, marked up the holes where the respective screws go, cases hanging there. I know I'm blessed, I've got a very large workshop with multiple bikes, Nortons, BSAs, Triumphs in here, but I would generally use a really useful box and just put it in there, but it's good practice and it allows me to closely look at the case and give it a good clean. So here we've got the primary side, and obviously I'm looking for things like wear on the primary chain. I'll be looking at the clutch later on in the video, looking at the plates for scoring, for the basket to have chatter marks and how we clean that up and get a more efficient clutch. The state and condition of the kickstart return spring and the infamous cup at the back of the clutch, which I'll cover off later and show you how to avoid some common problems with that. But those BDIs people like Rhett and the more experienced people will have noticed that I've done this common schoolboy Blue Peter type thing and forgot to drain the oil, so a lot of blue rags soaking it up, and by the time the next video comes along it should be clean enough to have a look at some of those components. But for now I'll be removing the clutch top plate using the screws, and notice the star washers underneath the screw heads to stop them doing it. Some people use Loctite, I don't, I just use the star washers, never had a problem. Anyway, so top of the clutch cover has been removed and I'm using a 7/16 spanner on my MCA clutch removal tool. I've tried multiple copies of this clutch removal tool and recently bought two to service my several Bantams. I think I've got 7. And anyway, so we're going to compress the clutch and remove it and we'll have a look at the plates. Okay, so that's the top clutch plate off. Top cap and the springs and cups have been removed, and what I'm doing there, I'm looking for unevenness on the spring heights that may indicate that the clutch has been pulling offset or not evenly. If there's any difference in the springs, I replace them. I replaced the full set. It's easy to do it, they're cheap, a couple of pounds. The only supplier I use throughout the video for all of these parts is Rex Cornt. I don't buy anything from eBay, I buy it from Rex, and those that have done so will get a nice thank you for purchasing on their receipt. Little smile and a squiggle always makes me smile when I'm in a cold workshop doing this sort of stuff. But yeah, clutch springs, look for differences in height. and if they're all the same, they're fairly good to reuse for several uses. So let's have a closer look at my clutch. So I'm using Surfex plates on my B175 again from Rexcorn. I'm looking for scoring on my flat metal plates or any type marks. There isn't any, as you can see it's fairly clean, and the plate is generally evenly worn all over. So we're about to remove what remains of the clutch basket, which you can see there, the mushroom nut from the clutch, and then we'll remove the inner nut, and we'll use a servicing tool to lock this while I put the spanner socket onto this. We take a look at the clutch basket and we'll look at these walls. Clutch plates refusing to release or sticking can lead to finding that the edges on these are not as brilliant as they are. It's quite hard to show, but I think mine are certainly within tolerance, and I've no problems releasing my clutch or actuating the clutch. But if you find that you've got significant marks here that may be preventing the clutch releasing, it's very easy just to put a single metal file on and clean them up. Obviously you can only go so far, but these baskets are commonly available and not very expensive. So I'm quite pleased. I've actually found something that needs replacing, and it's a component often overlooked. But if I take off the center, you see the old roller bearing. Behind here there's a spring with a cup, and the cup prevents the spring overriding. Let's just take that. I can leave that on for purposes. Take the spring off. Now this wears, and it retains the spring. When it wears, it allows the spring to not really do its job, to sort of move up and down. So that cup will be replaced. I put here as a prompt to me to tell you about this. It's a B175 D14 Wassel oil seal kit. I don't use Wassel. In fact, several of us within the my friends within the Triumph Norton community go out of our way to avoid Wassel products where possible. Again, I buy them from Rexcorn. That's a set that I'll never open unless hell freezes over, but it's a complete set for the D14 B175. I get Vitron proofed seals from Rex, so we'll replace that spring and cup possibly. We'll have a look at that. I'll struggle to find any engineering tolerances that tell me what that should be, but it's still effective as a spring. It's just not very effective within that cup, so that cup will be replaced. So that's everything off the primary side of the engine. I'm going to spray it with a little bit of degreasant to tidy it up, and then move on to the left hand side of the engine, which is a little bit unusual because for many years now it's had a Bones CDI system, so it's not the usual stator and rotor. And I believe, to top it all off, I forgot the puller for the rotor, so fingers crossed, we'll see how we go. But we've made good headway tonight. Probably only no more than about 30 minutes work to get to this stage. Okay, moving on to the left hand side of the engine, a relatively simple affair to get the outer casing off. It'll first be the Bones mounting, the stator and rotor nut on the side, and the Allen key that's here to remove the outer case with the clutch actuating arm, and then obviously the drive cog. We'll have a look how many teeth are on that, and we'll have a look at the condition of that. Recently new chain, recently rear cog was changed on the B175, so I'm not expecting any surprises there. But it's nice to think that we're making progress tonight, and we will be starting on removing the left hand outer case. So left hand side, as we're looking at it, rotor and stator. As you saw in an earlier clip in the video, I had a Bones CDI system, so I've removed the Bones mounting plate from the three nuts that were holding it on, and you can see the little rotor here along with the spring washer, the removal tool BSA service tool, standard service tool, and over in the top left hand corner, barely visible, is the Woodruff key. They'll all go in a small freezer bag for safekeeping, and we'll proceed to remove the left hand side of the outer case. So I've removed the cap key, the Allen style key from here, and with gentle persuasion that case is coming off. Next shot should show you the outer case removed, and we'll see the clutch arm and we'll do a quick check on that. So simply removing the cap screw that you saw earlier on the outer case has revealed this. You'll see that I put the nuts and the washers on the studs. It's simply to keep them all in one space. Just to show you, it's warts and all video. Those with a BDI may or may not see it, but look at this that's down here. It's it looks like a capped screw that has worked its way into the space that was there. So goodness knows where that's come from. It must have been swept up from somewhere. Yeah, so the next thing is to undo using the correct size crossheads. A screwdriver is here, 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 and there's a gotcha here. Don't know whether you can see it in the dark, it's just glimmering there. I'll try and do the exposure. There's a crosshead here, and many people struggle to separate the case and forget about that little one there. But we're not far off separating the cases now. Sorry, I realise it's lost focus. Next little bit to remove is the folded over washer on the final drive cog, and obviously we're looking at the teeth, and we're going to have a look at the wear state of that final drive cog. You can just see the push rod tube coming out there that actuates the clutch, and the little indent for the cupped bearing. So final drive on engine has been removed. Points to note, I don't know whether you can see it, but there's a slight curve on those teeth, rather like a shark's teeth. They're not straight up, straight down, if that makes sense. They've got a slight curve, so that'll be replaced. What's a little bit odd is that the drive cog on the rear wheel is good. That's also the fold over lock washer that's come off. I replaced those. I know that you can have multiple uses, but when you think how important their job is, holding that nut onto the shaft, it's so critical that that doesn't fail and cause catastrophic damage to yourself when you're riding along. Point to note, that's a reverse thread, meaning that even if I can engage my brain, you turn it the opposite direction. So don't go over hitting it with a mallet to get it off. If you think about it, it's the opposite way to the rotation of the cog, because obviously you wouldn't want it unscrewing as you're riding along. Again, I've seen a few posts about that. So imagine you're unscrewing it to screw it in, if that makes sense, and vice versa. What I'm going to do now is proceed to remove all of the crosshead screws. Another gotcha here that people miss, and I've seen posted. There's two there, one there, and just to make it a little bit slower for me, somebody has over the period of time replaced one of my crossheads with a cap screw, so obviously we'll need a Allen key to try to get that out. But the case is nearly ready to come apart, and we'll see why this gearbox has been so difficult to get into top gear. There's another gotcha, you can see him there. It's better lit this occasion. Little screw, Phillips screw there behind the head, and it should gently come apart with a bit of persuasion. I'll talk about what I use to actually create the engine seal. I've messed around with many different types of Loctite sealings, and Rex gave me a free sample of 3-bond Yam Bond, and it's quite expensive, but it's the only product that I use across my Triumph Norton BSAs and my Bantams. Anyway, let's remove those screws and see what happens. So that's all the Phillips cross-headed screws out, including the two here. Doesn't matter how many times I've done this, I always seem to have a gotcha. And for my sins, before I started the camera and showed you all of the removal of all the screws, this one here got me. I was so concerned about this little hidden one here that I took my eye off the ball and missed that one. But anyway, you'd never have known that if I'd not sort of fessed up on this very amateurish video. A lot of people then talk about drifting the dowels out of the end holes. I've never needed to do that, and I'm not saying you don't have to do that, but on this particular engine, which is almost ready for separation, I've not had to remove any of the dowels or knock them out. If you do, I get a drift that is just slightly the same diameter as that dowel, as you can see there, and I just tap them out, which aids the case halves coming apart. But obviously extreme care, especially if you're doing it in a cold workshop where the casings could be brittle. Just take your time and don't hit anything too hard. But yeah, we're just about ready for case separation, so the next time you see this case, we'll be looking at the gearbox innards, hopefully. There we go. Two halves of a Bantam engine, B175. So, bottom end's good, no play on crank, no serious scoring on the inner cases, end float measured good. 4-year-old Vitron Rexcont supplied oil seals. I'll replace those just because it's wise to do so. Nothing wrong with them at the moment. Check the bearings. The bearings plays good. I'll change this bearing as a matter of procedure, and the next video will actually be showing the gearbox and how it actually fits together. As Rep pointed out to somebody who was probably interested in seeing how a D7 engine is separated, and indeed there's no different technique that I've used for a D7 engine, but these gearboxes are very, very different. The B175 D14 gearbox to me is more like a gearbox that I'm more commonly familiar with my larger classic bikes. So anything that relies on a spring will be replaced. I'll show you one of the Achilles heels that I found on the gearbox is on the actual, and that's your far end gear lever, is this spring here. Sorry, my camera's going out of focus. Can you see it? This one that I'm to the left of my thumb that's actually spinning on the axis. That folded over spring has a nasty habit over time of fracturing, and the symptoms are when you're riding along, the gear lever doesn't return to the 0 position or to the gear that it should be sat in, and you have to do all of this work simply to replace that. So again, a bit like the crankshaft oil seals, although there's nothing wrong with it, fearing metal fatigue, and I do push this bike. Many people may have seen my videos on YouTube. This is a 70 mile an hour GPS speedoed B175. It gets a hard life. I run it hard, and I know that my friend Chris Woolley and I often have discussions about run them slow, keep them a long time. The point I'm trying to make is I'll change it anyway as a matter of procedure. Again, it's a couple of quid, and again, no second guessing where I get them from. Okay, next one, gearbox post-mortem. So apologies if it sounds like interference, but there's very heavy rain. And I'm sat in my little chair in my workshop trying to work out why on earth this gearbox all of a sudden went wrong. So I start to disassemble the gearbox cog by cog, and I lift this up and I look here, and we can see what we're hopefully politically correct calling the female element of the cog. And then I look down here, and can you see the shiny bright steel marks on the next cog down? Hopefully the logic will stay. They're female. On this cog there should be several male prongs that engage with the female holes. All of mine have gone, and guess where they are? Bottom of the gearbox. You can't see it because of the lighting in my workshop, but they're all down here in bits. So there's the cause. Cannot remember a bad selection, selecting the gears badly. I know my mate Kev Mowbray and Simon Last will probably retort on the forums and going, Dave, you're always missing the gears as you pull away from the pub. But that's what's happened. That gear off the main shaft has lost all of its engaging male teeth into this sprocket. So that's the first thing that's wrong with it. Fingers crossed I've got a spare. Thanks for watching.